Hello, everybody. Hello, everybody. Welcome to my Brooklyn Bridge. I'm gonna turn the camera around so you can see me briefly. So my name is Megan, for anyone who doesn't know. I am a licensed New York City tour guide. I've been a licensed New York City tour guide for over a decade. And the very first tour I ever gave was of the Brooklyn Bridge. And today is the Brooklyn Bridge's birthday. She's turning 140, so I thought I would celebrate by walking over the bridge at sunset. Now, it was really beautiful earlier today. It's a little bit cloudy today. Hello! So yeah, it's a little bit cloudy right now, but hopefully we'll get to see a beautiful sunset. If not, you know, we do what we can do. For my friends who are watching, just let me know real fast if there's any problems with the camera at any point. I'm using a gimbal. Sometimes it gets like really shaky, and make sure that you can hear me on the microphone because I don't do a lot of lives. So I'm going to turn the camera around. Thank you so much for joining if you are here. Feel free to ask me all the questions that you have. Oh, hello, Andrew in Australia. And hello, Damien in Michigan. I went to University of Michigan, so this is really exciting to have friends from Michigan and Australia. So yeah, feel free to ask me any questions you have about the bridge or New York City or life as a tour guide and content creator. But for right now, I am going to turn the camera around so you can see a little bit of New York City and you'll hear the subway right now. Okay, I'm like trying to turn it around and there's in it. Okay, so right now I'm not quite at the Brooklyn Bridge. I got off the train at World Trade Center and I am walking by a building called St. Paul's Chapel. Now, St. Paul's Chapel, it is the oldest continually operating building in New York City. It dates back to 1766. So we can get a little bit of a better look at some of those tombstones. Now, if anyone's visiting from like Europe, 1766 isn't that old, but you know, it's 10 years before we signed the Declaration of Independence. So it's a pretty old building for us. Okay, I'm gonna cross the street. We're gonna get to the Brooklyn Bridge in just a minute. I promise you, we're just gonna head on up here as we walk towards the Brooklyn Bridge. This building that you see right here, that is the municipal building. Now, the municipal building, it basically serves the same point as, or the same purpose as City Hall. Our City Hall is really, really tiny. We're a city that has 8.8 million people living inside of it, so we just needed more space. So that's what the municipal building is, but you might recognize it from some movies like Crocodile Dundee and Ghostbusters. And we just have to walk through the park to get to the bridge. Oh, it sounds like there's an event happening too. Oh, this is very fun, my friends. We're gonna see a protest. So the park we have to walk through to get to the Brooklyn Bridge is called City Hall Park. Because City Hall Park is where City Hall is whenever we have protests, that's where they take place. So I don't know if you can hear it. Oh, I see some off in the distance. So we'll see what it's about, and then we will start walking over the bridge. So I'm so sorry if I mispronounce any names, but Wasev says that New York needs an Art Deco and Gothic revival. I definitely agree. I just gave a tour yesterday. Oh, I should put my press pass on and go see what this is about. Let's find out what they're protesting. Here to celebrate Brooklyn Bridge's birthday, instead walking through City Hall Park and seeing a protest. I promise you, we will get to the bridge, but this is kind of exciting, right? Oh yes, Beaux-Arts is my favorite. Okay. Let's see if we can find out what they are protesting. Oh, okay. So they are protesting the treatment of the prisoners at Rikers Island. Okay, so we are going to leave the protest. Okay, so All Animals asks me if it's easy to travel to Times Square. Super easy to travel to Times Square from pretty much anywhere in all 5 boroughs, as almost every train line stops at Times Square. The only one or 2, I guess, that don't, I believe, are the J and the G. But everything else, it goes right to Times Square. If it doesn't go to Times Square, it goes to Grand Central Terminal. And you're like right there in the heart of all the action. And then the Lewiston Train Spotter, oh my goodness, I feel like you are a train expert, asks if I have a favorite subway line. And my favorite subway line is the 3, because that's the train that I live off of, the number 3 train. So it gets me almost everywhere that I need to go. And I find that it's usually, like, knock on wood, pretty reliable. Do you have a favorite subway line here in New York City? Let me know. And again, I mentioned if there's like any problems with the camera or the sound, let me know and I'll try to fix it. I'm using tech that I don't normally use, so I just want to make sure that everything is working. Okay, my friends, we're almost here at the bridge. Start to see it. So you can start to see already the traffic right there heading onto the Brooklyn Bridge. And then we're gonna see the towers. It's funny because on the camera, the towers look so tiny, but from where I'm standing, the tower actually looks very large. So the screen is a little bit deceiving here. And it's just really cloudy. It's not that dark out. It's not supposed to be that dark because it's not that late, but it's very, very cloudy today. Now this is very, very important as we walk over the bridge. This is like where a lot of people make a mistake. So right now, I'm walking from Manhattan to Brooklyn. I am at City Hall Park. So we have City Hall is to my left. I am coming at this from the south. If I was to cross the street earlier, I would end up underneath the bridge. I don't want to be underneath the bridge. I want to walk over the bridge. So I am going to come to this little crosswalk, and you don't want to actually cross the street from City Hall Park until you get to this crosswalk. Okay, looks like we have the walk. And we're gonna start to go over the Brooklyn Bridge. So I'm going to share a little bit of Brooklyn Bridge history. So the Brooklyn Bridge was the very first bridge to ever be built connecting Manhattan to Brooklyn and crossing the East River. So as we walk over this bridge, we are crossing a body of water known as the East River. Now at the time, and we're talking about, the bridge was completed in 1883, so we're celebrating her 140th birthday today. So in 1883, at the time, it was really, really difficult to build a bridge that was long enough to cross the East River. I'm always like, no, music, stop, because I get flagged whenever there's music that's not my own. Let's see. Around here, I believe there used to be the Manhattan terminus for the Brooklyn Transit Core line. I don't know about that, but I'll have to look that up. Thank you. Okay, so the Brooklyn Bridge was the first bridge to be built crossing the East River. The technology to create a suspension bridge that was long enough to cross the East River just did not really exist at the time. People said that it could not be done, and the only way to get across the river was by boat. Now, boats are great. I love crossing the East River by boat. We have a lot of boats that you can use today to do that. We have the New York City ferry that you can use, New York water taxi, take your pick. A lot of tour boats will go back and forth. But in the wintertime, this can be very problematic because it used to be that the East River would freeze over quite often. And that made it impossible for these ferry boats to go back and forth. Now the legend is that a German immigrant named John Roebling was crossing on a ferry boat when his ferry boat got stuck in the ice. And he was like, this is ridiculous. I'm going to design a bridge that can cross the East River. So John Roebling designed the Brooklyn Bridge. Now when we walk a little bit further, hello Dewey. As we walk a little bit further over the bridge, we're going to see there was one really special, unique feature that made the bridge possible. And I'm actually going to get to touch it. If you ever come to walk the Brooklyn Bridge, you will also get to touch this feature of the bridge. So my personal advice is to walk from Manhattan to Brooklyn. The reason why I like to do this is because when we reach Brooklyn, there's a lot of really great food options over there. And that's wonderful. And then as we turn around, we'll get a beautiful view of the Manhattan skyline, depending on what the weather's doing. I'm a little worried that all the vendors are packing up and I didn't even bring an umbrella. I do want to kind of take a moment and just turn around here from the Brooklyn Bridge. As we turn around, right here you have an apartment building that is called New York by Gary. New York by Gary is supposed to appear as though that building is blowing in the breeze. And then of course right there, we have One World Trade Center. That's the building that replaced the original Twin Towers of the original World Trade Center complex that were destroyed in the 9/11 attacks. And then we get another beautiful view of that municipal building. The gold statue on top of it is called Civic Fame. It's covered in 24 karat gold. And then this building right here, I find to be so fascinating. That is the Thurgood Marshall Courthouse. It's named for Thurgood Marshall, who was the very first Black Supreme Court Justice in the United States. And he was also the head prosecutor in Brown versus Board of Education, which ended segregation in US public schools. So Thurgood Marshall is just a name that I think everybody should know. And then what you can't see is right over here behind the red brick building. That's where the Supreme Court of New York is. And that is where the Flatiron building was just auctioned off yesterday for $161 million. And I was there standing right next to the guy who won. So that was a pretty wild and wacky experience. Hello, I'm Matt, and thank you, Dewey, for saying that I light up the Big Apple. I always try. I aim to please. Now, one of the things that I usually notice is that people think, oh, I'll just walk over the bridge, it'll be really, really fast. I always say you need to allow at least 20 minutes to walk over the bridge. Depending on what the weather's doing, I might not make it all the way across. I might turn back just because I didn't bring an umbrella and I don't want my phone to drown. But as we approach, oh, and it got really windy. As we approach this tower right here, you're going to start to see lights. Now, we are celebrating the Brooklyn Bridge's 140th birthday. 140 years ago, electricity was brand new. People would literally pay money to watch people turn on a light bulb. So the idea of having a bridge that's a mile long, lit up in lights, was basically inconceivable. But the Brooklyn Bridge was the very first bridge to be lit using all electrical lights. And I just have to imagine how magical would it have been to be here on May 24th, 1883, looking up at the bridge and seeing nearly a mile of those twinkling electric lights, that brand new technology. It gives me chills just thinking about it, even today. It must have just been, you know, pure magic. And I'm really glad that we have the electric lights now, because it's really dark and cloudy. Now I'm going to look just ever so slightly off to my right. You're going to see some ship masts. So that belongs to a museum ship that is part of the South Street Seaport. And you can actually go onto these museum ships. I believe that they currently have the Ambrose and the Wavertree. Now the Wavertree actually used to go all the way down around the southern tip of South America, which is just very, very rough waters. And it was not one of those cruise ships that we have today. No, it was a ship that had sails on it. But I just think, wow, that was a ship full of very brave passengers. Now, I'm also going to turn us around again, just because from right here, I think we have a really beautiful view of a building called 40 Chrysler Building. If I hold my camera up a little bit, you can see Pier 17. Concerts there. They actually had some outdoor opera there. Hello, Jill from Ohio. I am getting messages that says my transmission is weak, so if I cut in and out, my apologies. Oh my goodness, I want to do another live stream with Sifat so badly. I will message him and ask him if we can get on that, because Sifat, so for anyone who doesn't know Sifat, his account is the NYSC Walking Show. He is literally one of the best humans on the planet. He does talking about the history, and if you really want to see live streams of New York, you want to follow Sifat. So here as we approach, we get this beautiful view of the lights, but what I really, or cables, I should say. Okay, so remember I said we were going to touch a feature that made the Brooklyn Bridge great. I have to end and put my phone away just for its own protection, because it's really, really coming down rain-wise at the moment, which is very sad because it's the bridge's birthday. Something about this bridge, when it was built, when this bridge was built, elevators, the way that like we know them today, didn't exist. We didn't really have skyscrapers. A very tall building at the time, really was maybe 9-10 feet tall. So the idea of having, I feel like I cut out. So the idea of having a bridge that was this high was unfathomable to people. Most people had never been up this high in their entire lives. So if you can imagine, it's 1883 and we're walking over this bridge and there are seagulls swooping underneath our feet, and you have never been up that high before in your life. How magical would that have been? And that's what I always like to think of when I cross the bridge. How magical would it have been if you were here in 1883 and you're seeing those electric lights for the very first time, and you're seeing the East River and you're up higher than you've ever been before in your life, and you're seeing this new technology of the steel cables. How full of wonder would you have been? And that actually inspired us to build 2 more bridges. So if we look off in this direction, we have that blue bridge, that's the Manhattan Bridge, and then beyond that is the Williamsburg Bridge. Now I'm going to have to say, I'm going to turn the camera around real fast. I did want to make it all the way over the bridge, and I did want to make it to Brooklyn, but the weather's really bad, and I don't think that it's necessarily safe for me, nor is it safe for my equipment. I'm more concerned about my equipment in this weather than myself. So I'm actually going to turn around. Maybe I'll get CFOT and we'll do a redo of this walk in better weather. Oh my goodness. So Wall on the Run said he wishes that, or she wishes, they wish that they could walk across the Verrazano Narrows Bridge. There's only one day out of the year that you can do that, and that's the New York City Marathon, which I never plan on doing. I am way too lazy for that. I mean, when the Brooklyn Bridge was completed, it was the longest suspension bridge that had ever been built. Verrazano Narrows Bridge, to this day, is the longest suspension bridge in the United States. Is it longer than the Golden Gate? It is. It is indeed. But I'm going to turn my camera off, and I'm going to put my camera away just because the weather's so bad. But thank you for joining us. Hopefully we'll do a redo when the weather is a little bit better. So happy birthday, Brooklyn Bridge.